I was born and raised in the Black Hills of South Dakota. The water that came out of our tap, the water that fed the ranches and the farms, the water that made the Black Hills what they are, came from underground, from the Madison aquifer, from the Minnelusa, from a system of underground water that has been there far longer than any of us, and that the people of western South Dakota depend on every day. I am telling you this because what I am about to document tonight is not abstract environmental reporting for me. This is personal. This is home. The Dewey-Burdock uranium mining project in southwestern South Dakota, near Edgemont along the southwestern edge of the Black Hills, has spent nearly 2 decades trying to get permission to mine uranium using a method called in-situ recovery. They inject a chemical solution into the ground, dissolve the uranium out of the rock, and pump it back up. The project would punch 4,000 injection wells into the Inyan Kara and Minnelusa aquifers, layers of the same aquifer system that provides drinking water to communities and ranches and farms across western South Dakota, including Rapid City. In July 2026, the company secured the last of its necessary federal permits and announced it is attempting to restart the South Dakota state permitting process after a 13-year pause. Tonight, as a paralegal, I am going to read the permits and tell you what they say, and then I am going to tell you where I stand. Because on this one, knowing what I know about the Black Hills and what I know about these documents, I have a position. In episode 31 of this series, we documented the pros and cons of in-situ recovery uranium mining, the method proposed at Dewey-Burdock. Let me briefly recap what it is for viewers who haven't seen that episode, because understanding the method is essential to understanding the permit documents. In-situ recovery, ISR, does not dig an open pit. There is no mountain of ore sitting on the surface. Instead, a network of injection wells is drilled into the uranium-bearing rock layer. A chemical solution, typically oxygenated water or a carbonate solution, is injected through those wells directly into the aquifer where the uranium sits. The solution dissolves the uranium from the surrounding rock. The uranium-laden solution is then pumped back up through recovery wells to a central processing facility, where the uranium is separated and concentrated. Advocates of ISR argue it is cleaner than conventional open pit or underground mining because it does not generate the mountains of contaminated waste rock that characterize the uranium mining era we documented in episodes 30 and 31. But here is what the Nuclear Regulatory Commission itself stated in 2007, and I am quoting directly from the NRC's own documentation. Although these in-situ leach mining techniques are considered more environmentally benign than traditional mining and milling practices, they still tend to contaminate the groundwater. The NRC said this, not opponents, not environmental groups, the regulatory agency that issues the licenses. The contamination happens because the chemical solution introduced into the aquifer does not stay neatly contained within the mining zone. It migrates, and when it migrates, it can carry dissolved uranium and other naturally occurring radioactive materials into water that was not previously contaminated. That is what the documents say about the method. Now let's look at the specific geology at Dewey-Burdock, because the geology makes the risk at this particular site more significant than at most ISR sites in the country. The Dewey-Burdock project intersects 3 distinct aquifer layers in the Black Hills system. The table is on your screen. I want to walk you through each one because the documented relationship between them is the center of this story, the Inyan Kara. This is the uranium-bearing sandstone layer, the zone the company proposes to mine. The EPA granted an aquifer exemption for this layer, which is required by law when you plan to inject mining fluids directly into an underground drinking water source. The aquifer exemption means the company has permission to degrade this layer. The Inyan Kara feeds private wells and surface waters, including the Cheyenne River, which flows alongside the Pine Ridge Reservation, the Minnelusa. This is the layer above the Madison and Encore's proposed wastewater disposal zone. The EPA's Class 5 permit authorizes the company to inject treated ISR process waste fluids into the Minnelusa Formation. The Minnelusa is a drinking water source for communities across western South Dakota, and in 1985, the United States Geological Survey documented that in the eastern part of the study area, water may be leaking from the Minnelusa to both the Inyan Kara and Madison aquifers. The Madison, this is the one that matters most to the most people. The Madison Formation is the primary drinking water source for much of western South Dakota, including Rapid City, the state's second largest city. It sits directly below the Minnelusa disposal zone. In 2014, a peer-reviewed article in the Journal of the South Dakota Academy of Science stated directly that there is the possibility that the Madison aquifer could become contaminated with this waste. And there is one more documented problem. There are 7,650 unclosed exploratory boreholes already in the ground at the project site, the legacy of previous uranium exploration. These boreholes create physical pathways between the aquifer layers. They are exactly the kind of geological compromise that makes the assumption of aquifer separation. The entire premise of the disposal plan is questionable. The company was supposed to close these boreholes. The Black Hills Clean Water Alliance has documented that this work was not completed. In November 2020, the EPA Region 8 issued 2 underground injection control permits for the Dewey-Burdock project. A Class 3 permit authorizing the injection wells for the uranium recovery process itself, and a Class 5 permit authorizing deep injection wells for disposal of ISR process wastewater into the Minnelusa Formation. Along with those permits, the EPA issued an aquifer exemption, the legal mechanism that allows the company to treat the Inyan Kara aquifer as a sacrificial zone for resource extraction rather than a protected drinking water source. The Oglala Sioux tribe appealed those permits to the EPA's Environmental Appeals Board. In September 2024, the Environmental Appeals Board ruled in favor of the tribe. The ruling found that EPA had handled the permit process in a faulty manner. This is South Dakota's first ever in-situ leach uranium mining proposal, and the Appeals Board found the agency had not adequately addressed the tribal and public concerns raised during the process. The EPA was ordered to redo the permit process on remand. That ruling is significant. It is not a denial of the project. It is a finding that the process was inadequate, but it also means that as of this recording, the permitting picture is not fully settled even on the federal side. Here is the other figure that deserves to be in this episode. When PowerTech sought its state water permits, the company disclosed it would use 379 million gallons of water per year, just over 1 million gallons per day. To put that in context, that equals the average water usage of 70% of the combined population of Fall River and Custer counties, the 2 counties where the project is located, and the Black Hills already faces water scarcity. There are documented plans to build a pipeline from the Missouri River, 18.5 million gallons per day, to Edgemont and other parts of western South Dakota because local aquifers cannot meet existing demand. Adding 1 million gallons per day of extraction from an already strained system into the aquifer that people are drinking from is the practical water question the permits do not fully answer. This project has not moved forward in nearly 2 decades, not because of regulatory indifference, but because of sustained, documented, multi-front opposition from the communities most directly affected. The Oglala Sioux tribe has been the most effective legal opponent. The Dewey-Burdock site is at the headwaters of the Cheyenne River, which flows directly alongside the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. The tribe's water resources director has documented that they want the company to fund or complete required groundwater tests and complete a cultural resources survey of the site, a site central to the spiritual beliefs and practices of the Lakota people. The legal challenge they brought produced the September 2024 EPA Appeals Board ruling, the finding that the permit process was inadequate. The NDN Collective, a Rapid City-based indigenous advocacy organization, has also opposed the project, citing concerns about impacts to historic and cultural sites in the Black Hills. The Black Hills Clean Water Alliance has been monitoring and opposing this project for years. Its executive director, Lilius Jarding, is unambiguous. The people don't want this. There will be public pushback. And then there is the most direct democratic expression of community opposition available. In 2022, residents of Fall River County, the primary county where the project is located, voted in a citizen initiative to prohibit new uranium mining in the county. The residents of Fall River County voted. The result was documented. And the company is proceeding anyway, because the federal permitting structure supersedes the county initiative. I want you to sit with that for a moment. The people who live there voted, and it does not matter. Here is where I stand, clearly. I grew up in the Black Hills, and I have read the permits. I have read the USGS study from 1985. I have read the peer-reviewed journal article from 2014 that says, directly and in scientific language, that the Madison aquifer could become contaminated with this waste. I have read the NRC's own statement that in-situ leach mining still tends to contaminate groundwater. I have read the EPA Appeals Board ruling that found the permit process was inadequate. I have done the work this channel always does. Read the documents, report what they say. And here's what I think. The Madison aquifer is not a resource to be risked for uranium that may or may not be economically viable to extract. It is the water that western South Dakota drinks. It is the water that feeds the ranches and the farms and the communities that have been there for generations. It is irreplaceable. Once a confined aquifer is contaminated, once the chemistry of that underground water is permanently altered, there is no restoring it. There is no cleanup that returns it to what it was. There is no corporate indemnity that gives the water back. The company's own economic assessment acknowledges that uranium prices must reach a certain threshold for the project to be viable. The community voted to prohibit new uranium mining. The Oglala Sioux tribe won a legal ruling finding the permit process inadequate. The USGS documented that aquifer leakage is geologically possible at this site, and there are 7,650 unclosed boreholes in the ground that nobody has fully accounted for. Against all of that, the argument for the project is that uranium is needed for nuclear energy, and that in-situ recovery is cleaner than open-pit mining. Both of those things are true. Neither of them is sufficient justification for accepting a documented risk to an irreplaceable drinking water source for hundreds of thousands of people. The people who live there voted. That should have been the end of it. The state permitting process is just restarting. Encore Energy submitted new water rights applications to the South Dakota Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources. The state confirmed it has not yet received applications for mine or groundwater discharge permits. The timeline for processing state permits, the department spokesman said, is difficult to predict, depending on the level of public participation. The level of public participation, that phrase is the most important one in this episode for anyone who cares about what happens to the water beneath the Black Hills. The state permitting process requires public comment periods. It requires hearings. It requires the government to consider the input of the people who live there and who depend on that water. The Black Hills Clean Water Alliance bhcleanwateralliance.org has been tracking every permit, every appeal, every legal filing in this case for years. If you want to know when the public comment periods open, when the hearings are scheduled, and what the current status is in real time, that is where to go. In this episode of this series, we documented what uranium mining has already left behind. The legacy contamination, the tailings, the communities that paid a price they were not warned about. In the next episode, we documented the health costs of that legacy. In episode 31, we documented what in-situ recovery is and what it claims to offer. This episode, episode 30, is the present tense of that story. It is happening right now. The permits are being filed. The state is beginning its review. The fight is not over. The Madison aquifer has been there longer than any of us. It will be there long after all of us are gone. Or it won't if we make the wrong decision about what we allow to be injected into the rock above it. That decision is being made right now. And it is being made by people who are required to listen to you. The documents are in the description. This is Words with Wentz. Know the truth.
Let the signal cut through the noise. Reading between the lines. Every story leaves a trace, unlocking time and space, finding truth with